Hello, this is Richard Pears from FinextraTV. I'm joined today by Matthew Adams, who's co-founder of Endjin, which is a Microsoft Most Valued Partner. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Now, I really wanted to get to this session with you today because people will know that we've been running this channel on sustainable finance, and we did the workshop most recently where we profiled a company called OceanMind. OceanMind, a great story which people can look back on about tracking, fishery in the oceans. But you were the guys that were behind the design of the technology in this situation. Is that right?
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
So we've been working with OceanMind to take their technology from an on-prem solution into the cloud and take advantage of the scale we can get in the cloud.
And I think people were really amazed by the way that you can, out in the deep ocean, you can track these boats and use satellites, and you can bring the data in and you can use that to inform supply chains, which informs sustainable finance. So that was the sort of connection of fisheries into Finextra and so forth. But tell us, when you got into this project, first of all, how do you start to look at the business problem of an organization like that and then translate that into the technology you were talking about, cloud there? How do you go about that with, I think, Wardley Maps, you were saying, is one of your approaches?
That's right. One of the most important things is to understand where we are. Before you try to move to somewhere else, you need to understand where you're starting from. And we use this technique to look at the business and where the business value is derived and map it onto the technologies that underpin the delivery of that value. And we can see where we're using commodity technology, where we're using custom developed technology. And we can see how they map together to produce the value that the business requires at the end. But that also enables us to see where we are using custom technology where we could be using commodity technology, or we're using commodity where really this is a core part of the value and we should expend our resources in enhancing that and really putting our effort into those areas. And we can produce this Wardley map to identify where we can move things from custom to commodity and commodity to custom to increase the value delivery for lower cost. That's fundamentally
and
the
this
process.
Is reasonably sort of high level. Sometimes these complicated architectural diagrams, kind of lose the business, I think, in the explanation. But you're really looking at things like, slavery, fishery, ocean protection. You're looking at the big themes on these Wardley maps and then linking them through to the technologies. Is that right?
Exactly that. It's one of the problems that many businesses face is that they're very dependent on technology, but the business doesn't necessarily understand the technology. There are people within the business who do, but it doesn't pervade the organization. And this is a really good way to visualize those big, important vision things of the business and then break them down and map them into the actual technology that underpins them and help everybody understand. Technologists understand how they are delivering value, business folks understanding how that value is derived.
And we're interested in this, aren't we? Because in sustainable finance, we want to obviously make the capital flow to the projects that are actually going to improve the health and well-being of people, profit and planet. And looking at these supply chains is one of the great ways that we can bring data into the financial industry. So if we move it on to this question of data, a lot of the debate in the industry these days is around a sort of a universal truth, a single taxonomy which fundamentally allows everything to be classified so that everything can be measured. There's great virtue in that, but there is also a challenge, isn't there? And I think looking at distributed databases, etc., is something that you have an opinion on, other ways of skinning that cat, if you will.
I agree. I think that there is great virtue in the process of trying to normalize all this data, but I think if we hang our hats on expecting that to produce the outcome and be the sole route to that outcome, I think we're on a hiding to nothing. What we actually need to do, my perspective at any rate, is to look at the value chain end to end. And whether that's in an industry or then as that aggregates up to the global level, we see actually a value chain is a series of exchanges of value between individuals. For example, a farmer to a driver to a distributor through to a buyer to a retail outlet to a consumer. Each of these is a separate little exchange of value. And in order to deliver that value exchange, they depend on their partners and their suppliers. So the logistics company, the people providing the software that manages the supply chain itself. And what we need to do in all these bits of data exchange, in order to get data to flow through the system, is tag that data into these bits of value exchange so that they become a natural part of the process. And that means involving all of those participants in that value exchange at the point at which they become involved in the process,
right,
and getting them to understand the need for and the benefit of bringing this sustainability data through the chain.
Yeah.
Because everybody's interests in that value exchange are different. The consumer to the retail unit is completely different from a consumer to the retailer. Is completely different from the farmer to the driver,
Yeah,
for example.
yeah.
And of course, the finance that enables all that to flow has a different set of interests in there too, and need to be brought to bear on the problem.
And so that doesn't mean that you have to absolutely have a standard taxonomy and schema and definition for absolutely every element of that data and that chain. It's just got to be available to be, parsed through that chain, if you will. Is that right?
Exactly, and we see that in other areas all the time. For example, we were talking earlier about the open banking initiative, and that's very interesting because although it is a mandated set of protocols that are opening up the banking world to initially consumer finance, but extending out elsewhere, we're not actually mandating the exact data set that is exchanged. And this is actually a real opportunity for the participants in that. Initially it was imposed, but it's now seen as an opportunity to add the data that's needed to enrich and add value to those exchanges between the bank and the consumer, or business to business. And we need the same kind of approach throughout that value chain, I think,
Yeah.
in order to deliver this kind of data. We need to mandate the protocols, but not necessarily what we exchange within that. There are various opportunities and ways in which this can be done.
Yeah, and this then allows both the ability to get to a normalised view and reporting for regulatory purposes, etc., and to check the veracity of the data, but it also allows each participant in the industry then to derive their unique value, which clearly you're going to need if this is going to be a commercial opportunity, I assume, as opposed to just being a mandated regulatory approach.
Exactly, and we do need a little bit of both. There's, the Open Banking Initiative, again, is a great example because it's push and pull. Governments and regulators have mandated open banking, but then created the space in which people can innovate and generate opportunity and commercial opportunity. And I think that the sustainable finance aspects of this will create the same environment. We're going to need to identify key influences in the value chain who are going to bring to bear the regulatory and the social impact, what you might call the PR side of it, in a push and pull. But then within that space, once that space is created, we need to help people to see what opportunities there are for innovation in that space.
And so, to sort of conclude, the role of Endjin as you say, a Microsoft most valued partner, what do you see within what's going in the world of technology, the tools, if you like, the cloud, the distributed, the world of data, etc.? What makes it now that this is much more achievable than perhaps the experience that we've all had of years past?
Well, all of the fundamental tools and platforms that we need are now ubiquitous. Across the planet, we can get data at whatever fidelity, at whatever level of security, at whatever scale we require. That's the baseline that's there for everybody to build off now. And in fact, we also have the understanding within the industry that openness and APIs and data exchange and connecting up multiple third-party systems is the way that technology needs to interact, and people are generating these ecosystems in all sorts of different spaces. So the mindset is there and the technology is there. Now we need to understand what to do with it. And there are lots of very simple things we can do, of which joining up the technology and the business goals is going to be a key part. I still think that we are very disconnected technology and vision are still very
Yeah.
disconnected in most organisations, particularly when they don't see themselves as a technology organisation. The individual coffee farmer does not necessarily see herself as a technology-driven organisation, but in fact they are in many ways that are below the surface.
Absolutely.
And how we connect that thinking up is going to be a key enabler for this. But there are loads of things we can do that actually have a direct impact. Efficiency being one. One of the things that will make this shift in technology work is becoming better technologists.
Yeah.
Not using the fact that this compute is cheap and ubiquitous to be inefficient, but to say, well, we can save, the carbon footprint of this entire value chain can be halved if we turn off half of our computers.
Yeah.
And if we can turn off half our computers, if we can make our algorithms twice as efficient.
Yes.
And that's the story of OceanMind.
Yes.
We are able to scale up. The work we've done there, we were able to scale up to global scale of these millions of messages to address these significant social and environmental concerns, but at a fraction of the computational energy cost, because we've been more efficient.
And they're using, Microsoft announcement to go to cloud zero, to carbon zero, and firms can move to that platform, and actually, which also reduces their carbon footprint. So,
exactly, we can all contribute.
Yes, and it's just fascinating, an organisation of that size, which is able to deliver these results, and we've got to sort of feed that all the way through, I think, the overall financial services value chain. Matthew, thank you so much for being with us today. It's really fascinating, and look forward to working with you again on our next workshop.
Thank you very much. It's been fantastic.